Mr. Zernicki coming to you with a review of proportions. What are proportions? They're just two ratios that equal each other, okay? Since we usually see ratios as in fractional form, I have put 2 right up here. We have 1 to 2 equals 2 to 4, okay? Basically, when we have two ratios that equal each other and they're proportional, they're equivalent fractions. What does that mean? That means that all of them can be reduced down to the same thing if we really wanted to reduce them down to the same thing. If they reduce down to the simplest form and they're the same, they're equivalent fractions and they're proportional. Okay? We also know that when we're dealing with a proportion, that cross products have to be equal. What's a cross product? Cross product is when we cross multiply and divide. Product is just a fancy term for the answer to a multiplication problem. So, 2 times 2 is 4. That has to equal 1 times 4, right there. And that's 4. Since they equal, they are proportional. If they did not equal, if I asked you if this was a proportion, and I gave to you 1 to 2 is equal to 2 to 5, we could check to see if it is a proportion by cross multiplying. We would say 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 2 is 4, 5 is not equal to 4, and as a result, these are not proportional. Okay? That's how we can check to see if they're proportion if we are given all 4 numbers. Okay? When we see it in table form, we see a bunch of numbers. Basically what we're looking at here is our ratio in fractional form. It just happens to be encased in a table. We are multiplying. Common misconception, some problems. Individuals want to add. I just added 1. I just added 1. I added 1. And that's what we do. Well, there's a pattern. And when we add, we're really multiplying in some cases. This is one of those cases. So, because we're adding a constant number, for instance, if I said 4 times 3, 4 times 3, well that's 12. This is the same as saying 4 3 times. 4 3 times, I add them, I also get 12. I'm trying to get you away from saying adding, okay, and we want to stay with multiplication. Multiplication, very important this year. A lot of things multiplication. 1 times 2 is 2. So I multiplied 1 by 2 to get this one. Well, I'm going to take the same number that went with 1, 3, and multiply it by 2 to get 6 times 2. I do not have to stay next to them one after the other after the other. You can see here we jump from 4 to 8. Okay, so it's important not just to simply add. They are all multiples. I can pick any of these numbers to help me get the answer here. If, for instance, we didn't know that this was 24, I can use any of these numbers that are the easiest. I can say, 4. I know 4 times 2 gives me 8. 4 times 2 will give me 8. Well, I use the same number that went with 4, which is 12, and I multiply that by 2. That will give me my missing number, 24. That's one way you can solve and find the missing value there. Another way that you can find it is what we just talked about, the cross multiplying and dividing over here a second ago. What I can do is I can cross multiply and divide. So 8 times 12 is 96. That is going to equal 4 times some unknown number, x. 4x. Okay? Now, what I can do, I can go ahead and divide this by 4, and then those will cancel out. Why do I divide by 4? Well, I'm going to divide by the number that I see being multiplied by x. I want to get x by itself, and in order to get it by itself, I do the inverse operation. I do the opposite of what's there is basically what I'm doing. Since I'm multiplying 4 times x, I want to divide by 4. If I was dividing, I would want to multiply. I'm doing the opposite. Same number, and as a result, this becomes 1. Any number divided by itself is 1. I get 1 times x, which is x. 1 times any number is that number. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 7 is 7. So 1 times x is x. Okay, since I'm running out of little space here, I'm just going to put x. I'm going to carry down the equal sign, but because I divided by 4 here, I need to divide this by 4. Okay? Why? Well, this equal sign is like a balance, okay? It's a balance. And we are balanced right now. It says we're equal. As soon as we start doing something to one side, we have altered the balance, and all of a sudden it tips. It is not the same. In order to make it the same, I need to do the same to the other. So if I add the weight of one marker here, I add the weight to the marker here, I'm now back to a balanced position. So since I multiplied this by 4 on this side, I have to do it by 4 on this side as well. 96 divided by 4 is 24. My answer then for x is 24. X is our missing number. This would be 24. That's another way that I can solve. Okay, those are probably the easiest ways. There are some other ways you can solve and find the missing value, but those are probably the easiest. If I didn't want to use 4, just as a note, to get 8, since say 4 times 2 is 8, I could use 2. I can use any of them here because they're all equal. I could say 2 times 4 is 8, so I use this same number that went with 2 times the same number that I multiplied 2 by to get 8. So since 2 times 4 is 8, 6 times 4 is 24. Okay? Just because I have some in between doesn't mean I have to use them. I want to use the easiest numbers that work for the problem I'm looking at. Okay? And if I need to, and these are all really kind of weird and funny, nothing says I can't create my own and make a simplified version that I can use that's more easily divisible to get into some of these other numbers. This is how we use our table. We're just filling in the values. Cross, multiply, divide. Okay? Doesn't matter which one. If I was missing one here, I could do the same thing here. I could say 3 times 2 is 6. So 1 times 2 is 2. I could cross, multiply, and divide. When I cross, multiply, and divide, this is our proper technical form. But if you need a shortcut, basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at my boxes here, my two ratios, right, in fractions, and I'm going to cross multiply. If I see the two numbers like this, that I have numbers, those are the ones I want to do. Here I don't have 2, I only have a 3 and a blank, but here I have 2. I'm going to multiply those two together, 1 and 6, and then I'm going to divide by that third number. So 1 times 6 is 6, divided by 3 is 2, and that 2 is my answer to put in here. When we cross, multiply, and divide, that's basically what we're doing. We're finding the two that line up this way, and here it's this way, and we divide then by that third number, and that gives us the answer. Okay?